arguments in favor of high-speed rail. I think one of the most compelling arguments is that it's one of the most efficient and sustainable ways to build new capacity. Demographers tell us that we're going to add at least 100 million more people in this country by the year 2050, maybe sooner than that. And right now, there's no way to provide the same level of mobility for that additional 100 million people as we experience today. So how do you build that kind of capacity? In many corridors, we've already basically reached saturation levels on highways, and certainly the New York corridors, we've reached saturation in the air space. So I think capacity is one of the key drivers that will take us there.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Al. I think when you look at our environmental, ecological, and transportation needs, it is a best fit. When you look at the key systems that we've already developed, the railroads of the last 150 years, the aviation industry, and especially the highway, and when you look at it in terms of where do we find the potential for expanding our infrastructure over the next 50 years, high-speed rail, lessons learned from Europe and other parts of the world, seems to be a best fit. It does seem to offer us literally all the attributes that we are looking for. Don't you think so, Ray?
I do. I think improved transportation service, improved mobility also unlocks increased economic growth. And if you think about it over time, as we've improved transportation, it's led to economic growth in terms of improved quality of life, improved incomes, improved incomes and jobs for Americans. And we can't forget that part of the vision that we need to think about for the future.
I think an important aspect of that is that the population growth, the need for mobility, the demand on the transportation system are going to be there no matter what. And we can either just by default wait for the country to become gridlocked or make smart decisions that envision what we would like our transportation system to be and the smart land use and economic decisions that come along with that.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a great theme, which is called land use. Whenever you talk about 100 million more people, it's an abstract number. And when you ask folks about, well, where are 100 people going to live, immediately they take a look at our major metropolitan centers. And they say, well, of course, we're just going to onlay more people. So if there are 8 million people in New York, we're going to have 2 million more people there, and so forth and so on. And to a large degree, the transportation infrastructure is already at gridlock. So you really have a difficulty in really believing 100 million more people can be onlaid in our existing cities as they're currently organized. And somehow it's going to work. And what I see high-speed rail providing is the additional opportunity for creating expanded communities that are in distress, particularly in markets that we have already turned a blind eye to. So I see high-speed rail as providing a paradigm shift in economic opportunities in some of our smaller, more distressed urban areas that we had written off because they don't have the accessibility that we look at other communities having. So I really see this as a great opportunity of reshuffling the cards and revisiting a number of communities in the Midwest, in the Southeast, in the Northeast that we have essentially viewed as having had their day.
There, if you get into the demographic studies further, you'll see also that we have a rapidly aging population, which also affects the choices people want to have available to them. There was a scientific study done in California a couple weeks ago that polled the entire population and found that 75% of the people really want that choice, high-speed rail, even though California is having great fiscal challenges right now. 75% of the people are still saying, please tax me and provide me this alternative. And I think aging population, in addition to growing population, creates new demands. And the president's initiative is brilliant in terms of kickstarting the program with $8 billion. Later on, we'll probably get into a discussion of where's the additional money going
Sure.
to come from, because the estimate here is anywhere from $500 billion to $1 trillion to really build out a full intercity passenger rail system with perhaps 5 or more true high-speed rail corridors, and then intermediate speed corridors, 110-mile-an-hour corridors, to connect with those higher density corridors. But the other compelling argument besides the capacity is the sustainability argument. You know, you touched on the land use issue. You can move the same amount of people with 1/3 the land that's required to build the high-speed capacity versus an 8-lane highway, which
Right.
would be required to move the same number of people. And this has been well demonstrated around the world. 2 tracks between Osaka and Tokyo, or Tokyo and Osaka, move over 400,000 people per day on 2 tracks between those cities. And that's the highest density system. And to think of building a highway that would move 400,000 people per day, which has been an enormous use of land in that island. But the sustainability issue in terms of environmental impact, CO2 emissions and all that, high-speed rail stands up very well. It's probably 1/5 the CO2 emission
Right.
per passenger. In terms of energy consumption, high-speed rail is probably 1/4 automobile consumption, 1/9 air consumption. And we have the ability to use alternative energy. We want to really get off liquid fuel oils, and high-speed rail systems are all electrified just by the nature of the performance requirements. You can't put that kind of performance into a prime mover because
Right.
of weight and space limitations. So we are moving to more alternative energies, whether it's wind, solar, what have you, or using domestic fuels like natural gas. So once we electrify these systems, we will have the ability to use any basic fuel to fuel the prime
One of
mover.
the ideas for the California system is to power it with wind energy. And one of the nation's largest wind farms is right there in the Tehachapi's, which
Yeah.
would be the ideal spot to power it. Obviously, there's a lot of technical analysis and feasibility studies that would have to be done to make sure it's cost effective, but it's an idea really to make sure that the system is self-sustaining and is not impacting the grid within California, which is a big issue.
Which is under stress.